Joseph McCarthy, a man smeared by leftist liars.
This is episode 9 of Bad Philosophy with Rocky Mystery. We're going to really be covering his view on history to a certain extent, because I'm doing 2 videos that somebody recommended I do. They don't really have a lot of philosophy in them, but they make references to philosophy, so I'm going to do these 2 videos and talk about how he reads history in a really weird way. It's really confirmation bias. He believes that anyone who endorsed things that he endorsed, if they're portrayed badly, then they've been smeared, and anybody who advocated things that he dislikes, he tries to smear. Basically, that's his whole take on history. As far as Joseph McCarthy goes, in the United States, Joseph McCarthy is pretty much considered a horrible person by most people on the right and left. If you're a Republican and you're running for office, there's no way you could run and say Joseph McCarthy is a hero of yours. There's no way you could, unless you were in the most right-wing Republican district and you're running for the House. I couldn't see you doing that. There's no way a national candidate could. There's no way a senatorial candidate could. Even in the Deep South, they couldn't do that in the United States. He's pretty much universally reviled. And what Rocky Mystery doesn't seem to get is that McCarthy is reviled regardless of whether the people he was actually hunting or harassing were guilty of any of things that he was doing, because his methods are the reasons that we dislike McCarthy so much. It's the methods. It's not, in particular, whether we thought there was actually a communist threat, because, yeah, we were in a Cold War with the Soviet Union, so most people thought it at the time. And for years afterwards, up until the Berlin Wall fell, we still felt this threat. But even up to the 60s and 70s was when McCarthy started to be considered this horrible person, and we still were in the Cold War. It's not about whether we were in this Cold War with Russia and finding Russian spies. It's about the methods he used. Now, Rocking Mr. E has said before that he hates consequentialism. He hates the ends justify the means. But in video after video after video, I have shown you that Rocking Mr. E is a consequentialist. It seems like something that comes up in every video. He decries consequentialism and then endorses it, within the same video, over and over and over again. Only when it suits his purposes. His defense of Joseph McCarthy is consequentialism, because he says, well, he was right, so no matter how repugnant his means were, the ends justified it.
Fairly recently, declassified KGB and FBI files have uncovered evidence that shed new light on the history of a man that, while unorthodox in many respects, identified around 2,000 leftist spies in US government. History hasn't, however, been kind to Senator McCarthy. Anyone that's actually challenged leftists to any extent knows just how slanderous they are against their opposition.
Yeah, they might actually make YouTube videos in response to yours with rational, well thought out arguments that you can't possibly deal with. Is that what you're talking about?
Thus, the term McCarthyism is now used to generically describe those who allegedly accuse others without evidence.
Because that's what it is. Now, what Rocky Mystery will say in this entire video is that Joseph McCarthy was right, because Joseph McCarthy, the people he was accusing of being communists, really were communists. That's what he's going to say over and over and over and over again. There's no reason for me to even go through the whole video. That's what he's going to say. That is consequentialism. Rocky Mr. E says the ends do not justify the means. You're supposed to have rights. You're supposed to, and he'll say oh, they were never denied their due process. They were brought forth the Senate and harassed. They were told if they turned their friends in, they would be left alone. I don't know what he's smoking. If that's due process. That's not due process. You're supposed to be arrested before you can be questioned by people. That's not due process. Where the hell is he getting... if the cops come to my door right now and arrest me, and I choose not to speak to them, come to my door, they have to charge me with a crime in order to take me away. They have to charge me with a crime. If they don't have anything to charge me with a crime with, they can't take me away. If I choose not to speak to them, they can't do anything. That's my right. Joseph McCarthy violated these people's rights. He used coercion, which is something that Rocket Mystery says he doesn't like, but in order to get these people to be afraid for their careers, afraid for their families, and use that to get them to try to get them to name other people's names. Because they were going to be charged with something, he wants them to give up somebody else. So let's talk about who's a liar here. Who's a liar? Let's look at Rocket Mr. E's links on his actual video. His Joseph McCarthy was right video. Okay, links. Oh wait, there's his own blog. There's his Facebook. There's his Twitter. Okay, those are his links. All right, now here's a leftist view of Senator McCarthy. Wikipedia. Wikipedia is his leftist view. Anyone can edit it, and so it must be leftist. It's mainstream. His conservative source is Conservapedia, which, first of all, Rocket Mystery is an atheist. He should read the Conservapedia page on atheism, on evolution. They don't even believe in the theory of relativity because they think it has some relation to moral relativism, which Rocket Mystery would probably agree with them on because he's stupid, and the first episode of the series has relativism in it. But also, he called American conservatism Nazi elephant before, and actually put them on the left. He said they were left. Nazi elephant. This is American conservatism. It's Nazi elephant. So, his source is Nazi elephant. In fact, most of his sources are like Nazi elephant sources. But this is on the left, right? The elephant and the Nazi, that's on the left. He put those on the left. So I think he's a little confused. Which isn't the first time. Let's look at some of his other sources. Now he has 3 sources about the declassified, supposed KGB and American documents, and none of them go anywhere that will tell you anything. They go to in fact, the 2 other sources are using the other source as their source. And the other source is a organization called Accuracy in Academia, and I had no idea who they were, which is a bad sign considering my background. But I went and looked up who these people are. Well, they're a right-wing watchdog group. Let me use that in quotes. Who constantly look at academia and say that's left-leaning and try to get it to embrace their views. Now, the last link he has is a link telling you that you can't get the declassified documents and why. They can't be gotten to because they're not available to the public. So all we have is the word of a group that says that their entire agenda is to take the supposedly left-leaning, incorrect findings of academics and make them embrace the right-wing version. But they have no evidence. Where's their evidence? I have to actually see the evidence. I can't just take their word for it. But then there's a link telling me how I can't see the evidence because I'm not allowed. I'm not allowed to see the evidence. This is exactly what right-wingers claim left-wingers, they live in this tower and you're not allowed to see the actual information. But that's not true because with science and stuff, you're allowed to see the actual information. Where's the information? Never mind the fact that even if McCarthy was right, then you have to believe the ends justify the means. We have the same problem now with Islam. We had guys in our Congress, Louis Gohmert and Michelle Bachmann, saying that the Muslim Brotherhood had infiltrated the government. They kept talking about the Muslim Brotherhood infiltrating the government. It was exactly like McCarthy, who just held up a list of people he said was communists. I can't even tell you how many of those people were communists. I don't know. I can't find any source that'll tell me. I can't even tell you how many people he accused of communists because it varies from being communists, because it varies from 56 to 205 depending on which source you're looking at. I can't even tell you that with accuracy. But Rocket Mr. E knows the truth. He's given no evidence, but he knows the truth.
Communists often use this point to claim that communism has never failed due to its own ideological flaws, but due to fascists destroying their utopian vision. In reality, this is merely a deflection, since fascism is always a reaction to the threat of communism.
Now, Rocket Mr. E says everything leads to fascism. Going to the store to get frozen yogurt, paying your taxes, Voting leads to fascism. It's all leads to fascism. That's basically his whole thing. Anything that's not his views leads to fascism. So, like, this whole thing, once again, my view on this, on the Soviet Union, what happened in the Soviet Union, is just obvious. They overthrew the current government. They tried to set up small city-states like Marxism told them to, and they left a power vacuum, and then horrible people took over. That's not how it is in every single case, but yeah, like, that's what happens. When there's a power vacuum, somebody grabs it. That's what's wrong with communism, is communism, actually, there is no central power, so what happens is it becomes a authoritarian government, because there is no central power. When you have no central power and you have no rights and you have no, like, infrastructure, yeah, then what's going to happen is someone's going to take it over. That's why the first form of government we ended up having was monarchy, after, like, Hobbes and the state of nature, because the state of nature was so bad that people were willing to give a monarch power. It makes perfect sense to me. Maybe not everybody agrees with that, but the point is, like, there's nothing communist really about these regimes that were totalitarian regimes that call themselves communists. They're not egalitarian. Like, they're not. They're dictatorships. So, like, it doesn't, the ideology itself. Yeah, that's why I'm not a communist, though, or not a Marxist, because I think that those ideologies themselves leave you open to stuff like that.
To understand why communism leads to fascism, we can actually start by looking even further into the past than the 20th century, where communism and fascism came about. By examining the French Revolution of the 18th century, we can see that even this far back, and before communism came about, it was becoming clear that collectivist philosophy leads to nationalist dictatorship. Unlike the American Revolution, heavily based on the unalienable individualist principles of John Locke, the French Revolution was heavily influenced by collectivist philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. While Locke believed that individuals had natural rights that should never be infringed upon, Rousseau believed that individuals should be forced to obey the will of the collective, or what he called popular sovereignty. He also believed that people should subordinate themselves to the citizenry acting as a collective. This perspective had a disastrous influence on the French Revolution. For the first time in the Enlightenment era, the brutality of positive liberty manifested.
Alright, he's supposed to be talking about communism, but now I switch into the French Revolution. The French Revolution is really a lot like the American Revolution in respects, except for the American Revolution was colonies breaking off from another country. The difference, though, being that we were colonies. So in order for I guarantee you, if the American Revolution was more like a revolt in England and we killed King George instead of, like, being across the ocean, it would have been just as bloody as the French Revolution. I guarantee you. But we don't really view the French Revolution negatively in history, because I don't remember ever being taught, when I took European history in college, when I took history in high school, and even before that, ever being taught of it in this extremely negative light. Now, the violence of it is usually told that it was just extremely violent. The people were just really angry, and they were brutal in their retribution against the monarchy and against the noble. But in both the U.S., and I asked my girlfriend because she's English, in the U.K., how do you view it? And she goes, we view it extremely positively in the U.K. So, like, this idea that, like, the American Revolution was violent. In fact, the Boston Tea Party would be terrorism. It would be considered terrorism today. American Revolution, it's just like we didn't end up going into people's homes and killing them. But I guarantee you, if it wasn't for the fact that there was an ocean between the colonies and the UK, that's what would have happened. I guarantee you. It has nothing to do with Locke and Rousseau. Oh, and once again, Rocket Mystery does not understand a damn thing about Rousseau. I'm not going to repeat myself. Watch my episode on the social contract. I talk about Rousseau, and in Democracy I talk about Rousseau. I'm not going to repeat myself and just tell you what he gets wrong about Rousseau and how he misconstrued Rousseau, because I already did it.
While it's true that the French Revolution was not communist, especially considering that Karl Marx had not even been born yet, and Napoleon was in power long before fascism became a recognised ideology. The event was still the first clue that collectivist philosophy would always lead to a fascist conclusion. The Russian Revolution of 1917, over 100 years after the French Revolution occurred, was an even greater disaster than the French one.
All right, he still doesn't realize Marx didn't invent communism. That's why there's two different names, Marxism and communism. Because Marx didn't invent it. It existed before him, which is kind of comical. He's like, well, Marx wasn't even born yet, so we can't call it communism. He considers Napoleon to be a fascist, which, like, once again, we had monarchies still, you know, but monarchs still had, you know, influence over the state that isn't like how like a head of state does now. Like when the United States started, we were brand new. We were an experiment. This is like saying that the French Revolution led to the Napoleonic Wars is true, but it's kind of like simplistic and childish, just like all of what Rock and Mystery says. Because what causes something in history, I've done videos about, or a video at this point of philosophy and science, and I'm about to do another one. But like, you have to understand, like, you can't attribute things to a single cause, especially when you're doing history. Like a single cause. This is what he's doing. A single cause for things. You can't do that. You have to look at the whole of everything and everything that's going on.
Mere months after the Russian Revolution, civil war broke out between the Red Army, led by Vladimir Lenin, and the Bolsheviks against the White Army, made up of army officers, Cossacks, and other Russian nationalists. This pattern of nationalism fighting against the internationalism of Marxist communism would occur again and again in the 20th century. Whether it was the Chinese Civil War, the Spanish Civil War, or the Korean War, the same sides would oppose one another, both advocating positive liberty, where anything was permissible if it achieved a desired result.
Positive liberty means anything's permissible if it achieves a desired result. That's consequentialism, but is that positive liberty? Is that what positive liberty is defined on? Because positive liberty is supposed to be, I hate that term. I use autonomy, but I hate the term positive liberty. But positive liberty is supposed to be about giving you a starting point, because if everyone doesn't start at the same place, then you can never say that you live in a meritocracy, which is what he always says, meritocracy. But then he like puts all this weight on genetic traits.
What also made the Russian Revolution very similar to the French Revolution was the terror tactics employed to terrify the masses and purge the population of thousands deemed unfit for the new society. While the French Revolution led to the Reign of Terror, the Russian Revolution led to the Red Terror, where people were brutally tortured and murdered for being landowners and business owners, or what Marxists refer to as the bourgeoisie. Every communist revolution leads to this purging and repression of the population, since only after this takes place do Marxist collectivists believe they can get closer to their utopia.
Now when you take away people's dignity, when you take away their ability to feed themselves, when you take away their ability to better themselves, when you give them nothing, while other people are living extravagant lives, this is what's going to happen. Now, I didn't endorse this kind of thing. In fact, my political beliefs are about trying to avoid this kind of thing. If we keep going the way we are, like just keep going further and further right, this is the stuff that happens. This is what would happen. This is what happens with any kind of oppressive government is going to fall eventually, because the people are going to just get sick of it and rally against it. That's what's going to happen. And mob rule is not a good thing. I'm not endorsing mob rule. The big criticism of deontological ethics, which libertarians pretend to be deontologists, but they're really not. They're consequentialists who have made some rules to protect rich people. But in deontological ethics, like the big criticism of deontological ethics is that it tells you what not to do and it doesn't tell you what to do. And I think that's perhaps one of the reasons utilitarianism still survives. Because I hate it, but I see the appeal of it when Peter Singer makes those arguments about feeding the poor. Like, there are kids in Africa right now dying. And if you saw a child drowning in a pond and you were wearing like a $200 suit on your way to work and you didn't stop and ruin your suit to save the child, people would consider you a monster. But when we don't do anything about mass poverty, that's the same thing. Now, in the French Revolution and both the Russian Revolution, the rich were just living it up and the poor were crushed into the ground. That is how it was. So when they had a revolution, they took out their revenge on them. Now, revenge is not a good thing. It's not a good motive for anything. And it just leads to more violence. But Rocky Mr. E is so simplistic in the way he sees these things, sees these huge historical events. He does not understand he doesn't think that the horror that was going on before is bad. Like, he doesn't think that what the rich were doing to the poor in France or in Russia was bad before that. He's just like, oh, that kind of stuff's okay because they're just a bunch of monkeys who don't have any, like, they were genetically chosen to be inferior. That's how he thinks of it. Very deterministic. If you're poor, you deserve to be poor. You deserve to be ground into the ground. But killing rich people, oh my God, that's like the worst crime ever. Killing rich people. I mean, we should judge every death, how sad it is, by how much the guy had in his wallet. That's what we should do. So what Rockin' Mr. E would say to, the peasants during the French Revolution, he would have a Marie Antoinette let them eat cake kind of attitude. He'd say, suck it up. You're not going to take away rich people's rights or anything. Suck it up. That's what he would say to the people of Russia. That's what he says to the poor people in the UK. It's what he says to the poor people in the United States. It's what he says to poor people everywhere. Just suck it up. Get yourself a wife to take care of you like me. Oop. Well, I didn't mean to say that one. Anyway, but that's what he says. But Rockin' Mr. E has a history of lying. So I've actually found several of his things to be outright lies, but I'm just going to give you an example of one from his blog. This is Rocky Mr. E's blog. He claims that European Parliament is going by this report about how you are supposed to teach very young children how to masturbate for their sexual health. The problem with this is he has supposed extracts that are quoting directly from the report, except they're not in the report at all. Though he has a link to the report as well as a link to a libertarian site where he obviously got the story in the first place. Rockin' Mr. E read from the libertarian website and believed their bullshit without checking it, even though he links the actual report. Because the extracts he used are from the libertarian website. This is the actual report. Here are highlighted sections that shows that it says age appropriate over and over and over again when it's talking about masturbation and sex education. It says age appropriate. Highlighted over and over again are age appropriate. My girlfriend went through this and highlighted all the age appropriates, and then she did a search for the extracts that Rockin' Mr. E did, which are coming up on the screen. She did a search in order to find if any of the phrases that are from the extract they used are in the report. None of them are. The extracts are made up. They are completely and utterly made up. There is nothing in the report that even resembles what he claims. What the extract actually comes from is a World Health Organization report, is what it comes from. And he probably never read that report. The Libertarian website linked it. There's this thing that started in the 90s with websites. Right-wing websites learned to do this. That they could get a story to go off if they took something from the actual thing, boiled it down to like something offensive or eye-catching or inflammatory and write a blog about it and then put links down and then count on nobody to read the links. That's what they would do. That's what they would count on doing. The World Health Organization does talk about teaching children about sexuality, but it's not like teach your fucking kids to masturbate all the time. That's like not what it's about. It's about teaching them about same-sex relationships. It's about how parents deal with children exhibiting sexual behavior at an early age. It's about not teaching children to be ashamed of their bodies. I don't see why anyone would be against this stuff on its face. Like, I really don't see why you would be against that on its face. Like, teaching children to be comfortable with their sexuality. Teaching them about gender equality at a young age. I know there's certain people who would. MRAs would. And certain religious type people might. But, like, thoughtful, intelligent people, I don't see them throwing a hissy fit over this. And in fact, Rocket Mr. E, this is one of the things that proves he's not a libertarian. This site that's supposed to be a libertarian site, why are they throwing a hissy fit over it? Because libertarians traditionally are kind of pro-sexuality and pro-sexual expression. They're supposed to be, but in this case, they don't tend to be. They don't seem to be. So since this episode's a little short, I thought I would share this that I found online.
Surprise, surprise. Rocking Mr. E, the cyber fascist, has once again revealed his true colours. You know, it's one thing to block people from your own channel, which is fair enough, except it is slightly ironic, contradictory, and hypocritical when you claim on that channel to support absolute liberty, and also they claim to support honest and open debate. I mean, come on. So basically, because this guy wouldn't let me speak on his channel, I set up a channel of my own, which was basically aimed at allowing people to criticize him without any kind of moderation or anything. So what does he do? He false flags the account down. He false flags the channel, claiming it's impersonating him. Impersonation. Right, so I thought, well, you know, that's a bit shit, that's underhanded. So whatever. So I made another one, which this one, you know, it doesn't bear any resemblance to his name, so it can't, you know, he can't say it's impersonating him. But he still flags it anyway, and I got a message through saying that the Google account associated with it has been shut down. Fucking great, eh? Thankfully, the channel itself is still up. You can check it out at youtube.com/blockingphilosophy. So yeah, that channel is still up, but I can't access it to post new content or anything like that, which is fair enough. I don't really care anyway. But the point is that this guy doesn't just block people and stimmy criticism on his own channel. No, that's not enough for him. He has to actively false flag his critics on their own channels. How can anybody look at this guy and say, this guy's for freedom, this guy's for liberty? He is a fucking fascist. He acts like a fascist on his own page, and to further cement his identity as a fascist, he panders to fascists, and he attacks people on their own pages. He destroys people's channels. And why? Because they criticize him. Oh no, I'm so right about everything that I can't handle criticism and have to flag you if you criticize me. You know what? Fuck you, Rockin' E, you absolute little cunt.
So apparently I wasn't the first person to get this from Rocky Mr. E, nor the first person to come up with the idea of making an entire channel that just has rebuttals and critics of him. So I just have one thing to say to Rocky Mr. E. Since Joseph McCarthy is one of your heroes.
Have you no sense of decency, sir, at long last? Have you left no sense of decency?